G'day Eagles fans and welcome to the Inside Swoop, courtesy of Jim Beam. Back for another week. Scoey, how are we?
I'm great, how are you?
Good, mate. It's wins. Happy days.
Positivity,
Yeah.
high.
It was the first time, obviously, in AFL, VFL history that two sides met with 16-game losing streaks. Obviously, with 18 teams now in the comp, pretty rare. And it did reward, the loyal 38,000 odd that went to the game and attended. You're pretty gutted you couldn't get your tip right, mate. Just went for North on the day. A bit stiff there.
Well, unlike you, I'm not forced to tip West Coast every week.
You tipped West Coast to go in the 8 and you couldn't pick them on the weekend.
So I did have some loyalty to the club before the year started.
It was many moons ago.
So it hasn't gone great for me this year, that prediction. Look, sometimes with my tips, I do things that I don't want to happen. I didn't want Kangaroos to win.
Right.
I wanted West Coast to win. What really put that on its way was the way they started. The way they started in that first quarter, you could see the pressure was up in the contest, and that spreads throughout. So coming up against a side that hasn't won 16 in a row, same as West Coast, you're going to have to start well to get that confidence going the other way for them, and I thought they did that.
But it's weird because they were smashing us, in the clearances in the first quarter, but it was on turnovers where we're getting them. So it was 4 goals, all from turnovers. But you talk about at the source, North Melbourne were dominant at times in the game, but mostly in that opening quarter.
Yeah, that turnover transition footy in the first half, I think like 6-4, I think West Coast were 6-2 were from that type of play, and that's not sustainable. So West Coast would have known that. Coming into any game, you want to dominate at clearance and stoppage because that gets you momentum and field position. They weren't getting that, and North Melbourne were. So at half-time, I think it was half-time, there was a 19 differential in stoppages and clearances. Sorry, in clearances. That's the highest differential from any team this year, from anyone, not just against West Coast. So a lot of those clearances and stoppages were in our forward 50 though. So although the coaches would have been worried a little bit, they changed a couple of things come half-time in that area, which really righted the ship. I think they went +8 in clearances in the third quarter. So they changed the way they played, but overall, what was the ongoing trend was the contested pressure footy.
Well, they also had a ton of uncontested ball in that first term. It was +35 or whatever. Yes. Jack Darling's quarter wasn't too bad. He started house on fire, seeing him at both ends of the ground, taking clunks, tackling, back to his best.
He had 10 touches, and a couple of them were in the back 50. Now, there's certain forwards in our game that are just forwards. Josh Kennedy was one of those. Jack Darling is one of those. And
don't see him back there very often.
It's not a negative thing. It's, you don't see some backs in the forward line either. So to see Jack take a mark, that play with the candy, the candy was good, but he took the mark at the top of the goal square in our back 50, worked his way up, got back involved with the play, a little bit of how are ya, delivered inside 50. And I just thought his energy looked great. I know he got some touches and a part of the ball, but his energy was the Jack Darling that's been a great player for the club for a long time.
So the tactical sub that was made in this second term, and when you think of West Coast's injury run this year, that's gutsy to pull that trigger in the second term. So Yo had to get 60 minutes, and they decided, right, Rhett Bazzo will come out. Interesting when you don't have too many key backs. We'll get to a little bit of that later. But how did you find that manoeuvre and then Yo's game?
Well, it was rare, wasn't it? You don't see that sort of move. I think it was a little bit dictated by the fact there was no game of waffle on the weekend. They want to get some minutes into Elliott coming back off another injury. So, it was risky, but it was a calculated risk, and clearly it was planned. Although when I was calling it, I had no idea what was going on. You just assume someone coming off in the second quarter, they're injured. I can't remember seeing that sort of move. So it worked, which again has been rare, things like that around injuries and player availability. Pretty much every game there's been something going on. So that to not have that, and then to have Yo come on, played 60 minutes in that second half, played all of the last quarter, took a big mark in that last quarter.
Yeah, iced the game with the contest at centre-half back too.
Yeah.
But the faith they had in Bunga to say, well, we back you to play tall and play it on their best for the rest of the game is a massive call as well.
Well, he started on lucky. So coming into that game, you look at our back line and there wasn't a lot of experience. You got Rhett Bazzo, Brady Hoff, and Shannon Hearn as the talls. Like Bunga's played tall and small his career. He hasn't been a lockdown defender, dour, like yours truly. But to put him on, I think Larky's in the top 5 key forwards in the game. He's not in a great team at the moment, but as North Melbourne get better, you'll see how good he really is. Look, the skill and tactics that Shannon used, like I sort of speak about him, like he started on his back shoulder basically and kept him in front and wasn't going to get beaten out the back. if you get in front of a player like that in Nick Larkey, Tom Hawkins does it really well. They just hold you under the footy and mark it, which is what Shannon Hearn was able to do. That's what Bunga's done his whole career, and pretty much best on ground, which, given he's just retired this week, a pretty good effort.
We'll get to him a little later. I mean, the Roos were gallant to make a fist of it in the end. They've chased down a 32-point deficit and got within, a kick of pinching it. But you'd say West Coast probably deserved it off the back of all these metrics that they've ended up winning. They're plus 15 in contested ball. They hadn't had more than plus 12 for the entirety of the year. They've won inside 50s after getting smashed early doors with it. That was the only stat we've won twice in this year, was inside 50s, and we did it there. The Roos were up 19 at half time, so what a massive turnaround that was. Ground ball gets, tackles inside forward 50.
That's a big one.
Was absolutely massive, and that gave you more scoring opportunities, clearly.
So they had 26 tackles inside forward 50, which is seriously huge numbers. Like, that's massive numbers. So the stoppage numbers I was talking about at the start, where they were down in clearances in that first half, an all-time record. I think 8 or 9 of them were from forward 50 stoppages. So they'd win that clearance, but then you get in, out, in plays. So the only way you do that is with pressure by the forwards, and it was evident. You didn't have to see a stat sheet to know that the pressure was up there. Felt like Noah Long was in the right spot a lot of the time. Jack Darling was laying tackles. Jamie Cripps.
He's had 11 of them.
Correct. And so, and that doesn't surprise me with Cripper. He's a senior player. He wants to set the scene for the younger players, and really did that. He was the guy that went inside a lot to sort of rectify what was happening around the ball, from what I could see. And he had a great game.
A couple of youngsters broke their ducks. So Jack Williams and Ryan Marriage tasting victory for the first time. Eagles media spoke to the big Jack after the game, getting a gauge on his emotions after a pretty tough year personally.
Oh, it's so good, so good. Just taking it in now. It was a tough start, obviously, the start of the year. Had an injury, was wiped out the first half, but being able to work hard, obviously, with the S&C, being able to get me right. So props to them. And just picking up as I go, I guess. Had a lot of experience and knowledge playing on some good players. Obviously, you're coming up against some big, experienced bodies, like Goldstein and Cherry out there. They're no pushovers, so it's good. But I've been working hard. Baz has been helping me out, and we've got a good rapport going now. So it's good, yeah.
So you've tipped your hand. You reckon Bunga's got the 3 votes, or the most coaches' votes for West Coast? Cripper didn't come into a calculation. 18, 11 tackles, couple of snags. Bally Williams, probably his best game for the club.
Who did get the coaches' votes?
I don't know. I haven't actually looked yet, but would you have given it to Bunga regardless of these other performers? Tim Kelly, 26-19 contested, had a ton of it.
I mean, that's a great game, isn't it, Tim Kelly? Bailey Williams, I thought, was outstanding around the ground. He competed well, but he was against one very experienced ruckman in Todd Goldstein, and then Cherry he's developing good player as well. So to go head-to-head with those, 24 hit-outs, he had 23 disposals. That's a huge game by him. But I'm blighted a little bit. He's a defender.
Every week.
He's a defender.
Every week.
Well, no one else looks after him. So it's like someone has to, and it's me.
Well, you got more love to give now because it was massive news yesterday. The Premiership skipper, your old teammate, hanging him up at the end of the year, 2-time Australian, obviously the club record games holder, picked 13 in 2005. What an absolute bargain that is.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bargain. I still remember the day, my very first training session here at West Coast Eagles, 2006 it was, right? So I got drafted at the end of that premiership year from West Coast. I got told I was getting picked up by a West Coast Eagles, I assumed player. Someone rocked up in an old sort of 2000s Commodore, 26, 27-year-old. I was a big footy fan back in the day, and so I remember thinking, well, if this is a player, he didn't play in the flag. I know that because I'd followed that year really closely. And so I was chatting away, and he's got hair on the shoulders, a receding hairline, big thick quaddies. And I was a bit embarrassed. I was like, sorry, mate, I've forgotten your name. So I looked at me and smirked. He's like, hey, I'm Bunga. So Bunga picked me up as an 18-year-old. Thought he was 29.
First and last time, yeah.
Yeah, correct. But he, as I reflect back on my career, he influenced me more than probably any other player. He taught me how to be a professional. He was extremely high-end in what he did away from the field and how he prepared, what he ate, what he put into his body, all those little things. And I learned a lot by just watching him and spending a lot of time with him as a young player. But then on the field, consistent, the most consistent player I've ever played with, reliable, honest, straight line running, but was a big moment player. There was moments where I think about, we played Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval, was a hard ball in the middle of two players, and it was the two captains, Shannon Hearn and Travis Boak.
Within the opening minute of the game.
Yeah, and Bunga, fairly ran through him, and that was done. That was curtains for Trav. He did it to Buddy. I was playing on Buddy one night at Subiaco Oval, and I was undersized and undermanned, and I don't think we had another key defender. And first quarter, Bunga's just, again, ball in the middle, ran through cleanly. Buddy didn't see him for the rest of the day, didn't have to play him. Jeremy Cameron, he did it to him, a young Jeremy Cameron. So he was never a dirty player, but just hard. And I just personally learnt so much off him. As a leader, he was tactically the best leader I played with. He could identify trends in games and change the way we played before that the coaches had time to get a message down. So the ball's moving too quick. We would all know as defenders, all right, slow the ball down, because Bunga had already identified that and told that, or he'd get it himself and he'd be cooling the jets, or in the reverse, have to go quicker. The way we defended, the way we set up, all those things, he was elite. And then, I guess finally, my memories about playing footy, the stuff I missed most was sitting around at the end of games as a back line, having a laugh about all the stupid stuff that happens in games. And there is so much of it. Bad umpiring decisions, getting a hanger taken on you, missing a kick, stuffing something up. So win, lose or draw, we would sit in a circle and have a laugh, and Bunga would be right in the middle of it every time, and he would be driving the conversation. And I've never heard someone hold on to a joke longer than Shannon Hearn. Something funny would happen, and he'd be rolling that out 7 years later. Like, genuinely, he's got about 4 gags, and he still holds on to them. So yeah, one of the great teammates I've ever played with, probably the best.
A massive loss on and off field, as you articulated. You can watch the full press conference online of his retirement to, all staff and the media that rocked up. But here's just a quick snippet from yesterday.
Start of the year, I thought that it always potentially was going to be. And probably about halfway through the year, for myself, I thought that was it. Just because it takes so long for the body to recover. Still want to be able to try to play at a high level. But the body just takes too long to recover these days. And the game needs you to be fully invested. And I just don't think I'd be able to do that next year. I've been so happy and fortunate to be able to play for so long. It's sad at the same time. Life moves forward, and the game keeps going on, as we all know. So it's all of those range of emotions of sadness that much like still play a couple more games, sadness that you can't play, because that's what I love doing, but also so happy and fortunate enough that I've been able to do it. Because as I said, like, some people don't get the opportunity to, and some only for a game. I've been fortunate enough to do it for 18 years.
So that was yesterday's press conference, but the one I remember the most was his first as captain. And one of the journalists straight up asked him a question. It was one of the great answers of all time.
What kind of captain do you want to be?
Hopefully premiership one would be nice. And it's a hard one to answer.
So a premiership one, right? That's about as good as it gets, I reckon. And no smirk on his face. You can hear everyone laughing in the room as well. It was dead serious, and he knew he was going to deliver that, and he did.
Where does he rank, and is he slotting him into the back six of the best 22 Eagles of all time? So you've got the likes of...
Yes. Before you go through them. But yes.
Are you going to name the six then, and where you're slotting him? So you got your Wooshes, your Glass, your McKenna, Jakovic, McIntosh at fullback. Where do you want to go here? Brendan?
I didn't play with a lot of those guys, obviously, but Jakovic is there. Worsfold is there. I'd have Hearn probably on the other flank to Woosha. I played under Glass, so he gets the edge at fullback for me. Mm-hmm. I'd have Waters there, just for all-round good player, but leadership. I mean, I don't know if...
Fair bit of toughness in that back
There's
six.
a fair bit of leadership back there. There's like 4 captains. And you probably need a bit of run and dash from someone as well. Maybe Wira gets in there.
Sure. Yeah, very biased in playing days. But,
good backline.
Yeah, it's not too bad at all. All right. So we do have the Bombers this weekend. 6-day break on the road. Nothing new. What do you expect out of this contest, Scully? Essendon on the slide a little bit.
Well, they are. I mean, I don't know what to expect, to be frank. What I would hope for is a consistent effort that gets backed up from what they just put out. And whether or not they use the Shannon Hearn stuff as any sort of motivation, you'd like to think that...
Well, he's not playing with them, so he's not going to travel, so that's a tough one. Play for Bunga on the couch.
Yeah, I know, but... it's just when you're building culture and stuff at a footy club, like moments like that do matter. I know he's not out there, but he has meant a lot to this football club for a long time. He's been here for a long period of time. He's the games record holder. And yeah, he might not be out there, but you should be able to represent what he does, which is consistency, right?
Gov back. Massive. We'll get to TB in a second,
Yep.
but is he a certain amount of goal swing just by sending the big fella back there?
Well, sure. I mean, he stops goals. That's what he does. And whether that be intercepting or setting the guys up one-on-one, all that sorts of thing. We need a tall back with experience back there, which West Coast have missed. So he'll certainly add a fair bit from a leadership perspective, but a playing ability side as well.
Milestone time as well. Alex Witherden is going to play his 100th AFL game against the Dons. So he had 59 for the Lions rather. Came across in 2021, cost us maybe 2 third-round picks. And I think Brisbane paid a bit of his portion of the salary as well when it came back. They were planning for life after Bunga, probably when they signed him back in 21. And what do you know, 2-3 years later, it's come to fruition.
What I've really liked about Witho since he came to the club, now I didn't ever get to play footy with him, so he got there the year I retired, effectively. But I've got to know him off-field a little bit. He's a Geelong boy, Geelong College boy, so he's ticked a couple of boxes in my books there. He's a backman, third tick. But what I've really liked is, I didn't know about Witho before he got here, that he was as hard as he is. He's a competitor. I think he's very good as a defender. I had an impression that he took kick-outs, played on, got a few cheap kicks here and there. I've been really impressed with him. I think he's been a little bit maligned by fans. I think if you watch his game closely, his defensive efforts and element of his game have actually been stronger than what I thought he was brought to the club for.
I think that's probably the key emphasis of improvement that the Eagles identified, and something that he's clearly got better at it since he's been here.
I think he has, and it's a credit to him, 100 games. Look, I really see him continuing to get better. And yeah, life after Bunga, but you're not going to be able to replace a Shannon Hearn, ever. So you need a group effort to do that. And I think, not only from a playing element, Alex Witherden's been impressive, but I know he's a leader around the football club. I know he's a leader on the field, and I think he's been a great addition to the club. Just
before we go, Scully, didn't get a chance last week to discuss it, but Tom Barras, the vice-captain, is going to miss the rest of the season. Brutal landing on the firmest of decks, Optus Stadium, 3 weeks ago against the Tigers. He's fractured the vertebrae in the middle of his spine. That sounds joy. What kind of dent is that going to leave in the locker room and on field? Well, it's a little higher. I did exactly the same thing when I was paying for the Mighty Thunder year after I retired, and I can tell you now, it's not a good injury. It's not enjoyable. It was a little higher for Tom, so hopefully he doesn't have that real loading on his spine. You've still got problems with yours, though. No, mine's fully healed. Needed some rest. Look, they are still searching for my spine, but that's a proverbial spine, not the actual one. Just seeing if they actually got across the line there. He'll need some time off. You need time to rest your back. So I'm glad they've called him, done and dusted for the year. You don't want to try and play through something like this, and even if that's possible, I don't think it is. Big loss, but given the timing, given the year the club's had, I think he'll reset and be good to go first day of pre-season. Awesome. That brings us to the end of this week's episode of the Inside Swoop, courtesy of Jim Beam, of course. Scully, the Bombers on Saturday. Who are you tipping, mate? Go the Mighty Dons? Do you want me to tell you I'm tipping? You know who I'm forced to tip, so no secret there. Go West Coast.